I'm Mark Gagan and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go. Release your underwriters to underwrite with Advantage Go's underwriting platform. The oldest showbiz adage of them all is to always leave them wanting more, and this week's episode does exactly that. That's because it's a very short, sharp blast of energy from start to finish. Dawn Miller is Lloyd's Chief Commercial Officer and has just taken over as its America's CEO. Not many people have the energy to take on two huge roles, but it's clear after this meeting that Dawn isn't like many people. Half an hour with Dawn is worth at least an hour with someone else, so hang on as Dawn defines the essence of what her Lloyd's roles are, and we find out her goals and strategies for presenting the best side of the marketplace to the world today. I think Dawn is the culture change at Lloyd's of the last few years personified. Listening to someone as proactive, positive and passionate as her, you already know the market has become the polar opposite of the venerable but slightly stuffy institution it might once have been. Indeed, Dawn explains that probably her biggest job is debunking all the accumulated myths and baggage that have arisen around the perceived complexity, time and expense of dealing with Lloyd's. This one packs a huge amount into a relatively small space. You won't have time to catch your breath. Enjoy the podcast.
Dawn, welcome to the Voice of Insurance.
Thanks so much, Mark. I'm delighted to be here.
I was saying just before I switched on record that you're omnipresent, which I think is fantastic, sort of indefatigable. And I go to many events and you are usually the most likely person to welcome some people to Lloyd's or to an event or to something about innovation or something, all the sort of events that I attend in sort of day-to-day cut and thrust of London market life. I see you probably more than anybody else from the top floor of Lloyd's. So if just on the remote possibility that someone out there doesn't know you, why don't you give us a bit of a potted history of your career to date and then how you got to this position in Lloyd's?
So I'd be delighted to. It's a bit daunting to know that I'm so many places at one time.
No, that's just me. Maybe that's just me. Maybe we just happens to be a coincidence that you do a great job of representing Lloyd's and welcoming people to all sorts of events.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think it reflects the passion I have for our industry. So I started my career as a risk analyst in Washington, D.C., working for OPIC, now DFC, a government agency in the U.S. I was a political risk broker after that. Then I went actually independently into the energy business as an entrepreneur in Eastern Europe, so slightly off-piste.
Well, it's quite entrepreneurial, isn't it? Yes.
I got great stories about that. Then I came back into the insurance arena in the energy insurance space, working with AIG. I was with them for 13 years all over the world. Very grateful for that career. Moved to Chubb with them as well, multiple parts of Europe, and then ran some of their businesses in Switzerland and emerging markets. My passion really always sits with the emerging markets, regardless of where I work. And then from there, I moved here to Lloyd's, and I realized in that entire description, I missed one of the most fascinating companies I've worked for, which was AXA. So it was fascinating to go from AIG, North American company, very structured in a certain way of doing business, moving to AXA, both in Paris as well as back in the United States.
Well, I suppose they're great institutions, both of them, aren't they? Yeah. One's very European and one's very American.
Fascinating, right? And both wildly successful, but one is a structure that's very much owned at the head office and then deployed into the field, the other one being more of a federated approach. Then from AXA, I went back to Chubb. Again, a centralized organization. And from Chubb, I moved here to Lloyd's about 2.5 years ago.
And those sort of roles, were they mostly kind of development roles?
It was a combination of P&L roles and development roles. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, tell us about your job now. You've got two jobs.
I do.
We were saying that you seem indefatigable and you don't look very tired at all. But obviously, if I had two jobs, I would be tired.
It's all about the coffee. No. So thanks for that, Mark.
So it's Chief Commercial Officer.
Chief Commercial Officer
and
of
CEO
Lloyd's.
Of Lloyd's
Americas.
And that's not just the USA, that's two continents.
Exactly. Well, yeah, as you say it that way, that's right. So Chief Commercial Officer of Lloyd's. So I'll talk about that in a moment. And then just recently took on that America's role. And there's a very structured reason for that as well. So I get asked all the time, what does commercial mean at Lloyd's?
Because I think, does that mean you spend all day talking to the brokers?
No, not at all. We are 100% here. The corporation is here in service of our managing agents, right? Of the marketplace that we are curating, taking care of, that we're regulating and providing services for. So from a commercial perspective, myself and my teams, and I'll list them out in a moment, we are all here to make sure that that landscape, that garden, if we want to call it that our managing agents and the distribution partners we all work with have a effective playing field and landscape to work in, so that the best underwriters here can write as much business as they want. The distributors from around the world can find us. Our other stakeholders and partners can also find us and understand us. And I have a feeling there'll be a theme of understanding Lloyd's that comes out during this discussion. So the teams that we have, whether they are focused on the new entrants coming into our marketplace, honing our multinational capabilities with the incredible license network and services we provide. Lloyd's Lab, I know you've had some of our colleagues on before speaking about Lloyd's Lab. Also as well, our Lloyd's Academy, our entire license regulatory maintenance team as well. All of that sits within commercial. In addition to our offices around the world, we have 25 offices on the ground, a series of general representatives. And in each of those environments, there's a different type of platform where we service our managing agents. So that takes me to the second role, which as our organization changes, you have teams that move on, that retire out, et cetera. And we are quite sizable in the United States. 60% of our premium for Lloyd's overall comes from the Americas. So we are significant. We're a leading player in the E&S market. We have, over the last 15 years, really put a strong footprint into the US market, working through the different associations, surplus lines associations, really deploying out an education sort of framework so that distribution partners that are in the US understand how to access our marketplace through whatever avenue they choose, but really trying to own our own story. So now as we look ahead into the US, notwithstanding different topics, political topics happening around the world today, all around us, I think it's important that we establish ourselves more firmly in the US economy, that we demystify what it means to be a 330-something-year-old institution from the UK, that we attach ourselves deeply into talent development for our industry, because it's something that our convening power can really make an impact on, that we enter perhaps in a soft and thoughtful way the dialogue around legal system abuse, potentially, but most importantly, that we open up and we're clear so that distribution that seeks Lloyd's and the solutions we have can find us.
So it almost sounds like there's an element of lobbying there as well.
No, I think it lobby in the respect that it's creating clarity of who we are, owning our own story, so that some of those myths that happen around Lloyd's, whether it's if you're looking at it from the outside in and you're a distribution partner somewhere in the US and you want to access Lloyd's, but you don't know how and it seems too far away, it's actually not that far away, yes, right? When you think about it, but maybe demystifying that journey.
But certainly if there are links in the chain, and if the link in the chain is failing, and they're saying, well, Lloyd's does not do
just
that.
Just equipping all distribution partners, wherever they sit in that chain, so to speak, with information so they know who Lloyd's is, how to access it, what are the attributes, what services can be provided for them when they're here.
So marketing would be a fair way of saying that, marketing in the most general sense.
It is, raising that awareness. The other aspect I think is very important when thinking about the United States in particular, but also our other geographies around the world, is thinking about new entrants. I firmly believe, and we as an executive team here firmly believe, that there's room for Lloyd's in the strategic toolkit, if you will, for all of the world's best underwriters. Should never be replacing anyone's approach, never be replacing a local marketplace, but a strategic alternative in your toolkit. Maybe you want to use it for deploying capital differently. Maybe you want to use a Lloyd's vehicle to address certain types of coverages that maybe your core investors aren't as interested in, but you have other sideline investors that are. We see all kinds of new ways that the Lloyd's platform is being used for reinsurance, for transition, for new technology, which I think is super exciting, for simply opening up another parallel underwriting entity with new capital. All of that, and being able to continue to curate that messaging out of the United States, I think is important.
Okay, TinTech London Market is back on the 4th of February. It's the event exploring how technology is driving change in the London market and enabling the business and operating models of the future. Attend TinTech London Market to discover practical insights to help you successfully deliver technology-led change. Hear how industry thought leaders are enabling client-centric business and operating models. Plus, how new technologies like artificial intelligence are driving innovation. Benchmark your approach with market leaders who are navigating the same challenges you face. Hear case studies from those at the cutting edge of technology innovation, and benchmark and discuss strategic solutions with your peers. Don't miss TinTech London Market. Search TinTech London Market to discover the full agenda and speaker lineup. See you there.
So it sounds like almost globalizing the market. Obviously, the market's already there, but it was probably 30 years ago when people still thought to be in a Lloyd's syndicate, you needed to have a box in this room. We're sitting in the Lloyd's building. You had to have a box in this room. And it was about 20 years ago, we had some of the first businesses that were Lloyd's businesses 100%, but they didn't have a box, because I remember a business like ICAT, for example, which was a fully US business, really. But it was using the Lloyd's platform, of course, and they had all the right licenses.
We have members of our marketplace that are based in other geographies, but underwriting on our marketplace and taking advantage of the network that we have. So absolutely. And every day, all of us on the Exco here, but certainly within the commercial team, are looking at how do we address the perceived complexities around working inside the Lloyd's framework. Why does it take so long, in theory, as it's perceived, to set up an operation on one of our platforms? Is it easy to enter Singapore? Is it easy to enter Australia, Europe, other parts of the world? And the answer is yes, actually. But maybe what we need to do is update some of the guides we put out 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Well, certainly, because also the messaging stays longer. I'm a media person, so I understand these things. And sometimes I remember, when I was the editor of Insurance Insider, there'd be a section of the magazine. We were known for a certain segment of the magazine. And then you stop publishing it, and people still ask you about it, and they still think you do it. And
Right.
It takes about 5 years for anyone to notice that you've changed something. And obviously, Lloyd's has gone through a lot of change. So from a media perspective, I'll tell you, you have to communicate
Absolutely.
so much. Because if people say, as it might have been true 6 or 7 years ago, yes, it is quite slow and hard to get in because Lloyd's
But
probably
actually,
had
the
the
reality
break
is
on
not.
people coming in.
Exactly. The reality, it's not.
And that's not the case anymore.
Exactly. What in the past, I think, made things perceived to be slow, whatever the activity you're doing, is lack of transparency about what are the steps that are required. So now we're very clear about that. For a new entrant coming in, for new capital coming in, for setting up a service company, which is the idea of an office that is housed within our regulatory framework elsewhere, creating clarity around all those points.
To make it really clear. So then if you come fully prepped and you say, well, I've got this, I've got that, I've got that, and you can go, right, here you go. There's your license.
At the end of 2023, we approved a new participant into the marketplace in less than 9 weeks.
Yes, well, I had Mr. Brindle on the podcast, and he said, and he's not always been the most vocal supporter of Lloyd's. At different times, obviously, he's started his career in Lloyd's, made his name in Lloyd's, and then wasn't always previously the biggest supporter of Lloyd's. There were certainly times when he would have said that he'd be very unlikely he would ever come back to Lloyd's. And of course, he's come back, and he said, you could have knocked me over with a feather, which is a very English expression. That he said, we went into a meeting expecting to sort of plead, could we do this within 2 months' time? And you came and outbid him. Him by a month, I think.
Our teams were very proud of that feather comment. A couple of them came to me and said, do I get a bigger bonus now?
No, but that's great. That's because if you can demonstrate that you fulfill all the criteria, then you should expect quick service.
100%. And there are other mechanics working within the Lloyd's framework. So as you think about principles-based oversight, right? So anyone familiar with Lloyd's or any regulatory body that's trying to curate performance of a business inside their framework, as we do here, in the past, it's all rules-based. So then by default, you're pushing everyone down to the lowest common denominator because they're ticking a series of rules. We've shifted that. It wasn't easy, but through incredible talent of our teams here, I've shifted that to principles-based oversight. 13 different thresholds to look at, everything from performance to claims to culture to investments. So by doing that, you create an environment, and I'm sure this has been referenced, rising tide rises all boats, right? And so you continuously push positive performance. And then you have a framework that makes then bringing on new entrants even easier.
You've got so many things going on. What are your top priorities?
As ever, our priorities are making sure that the pathway for new entrants coming in is very clear. That's a key priority for us. It's a key priority for me to make sure that everyone understands the network that we have around the world, why it is there and what it should be doing. It was tasked with a very different goal structure and reason for existing maybe 10 years ago when the network to the size it is today was set up. Today, it's 100% around making sure our licenses stay clean and fresh and up to date, making sure that we have operational efficiency in all those offices around the world and those jurisdictions we work in, and that we can help develop strategic opportunity for the marketplace. Whether it's an intermediary that brings a large opportunity or a series of opportunities helping to bring that into our market, or it's a new entrant coming in. And then that complements, just continuing where I think your mind might be going, some of the additional target operating model and infrastructure work that's going on at Lloyd's.
Yes, well, obviously, that's not your responsibility, so I'll give you a free pass on that one. But what are your top priorities in terms of where do you think the best opportunities are? I mean, there's a whole world of opportunity out there, and it's a good time at the moment.
Yeah.
What makes you most excited?
When I get really excited about, and I was just speaking to somebody about this, talking about 2025, as we all are. And again, a lot of continuation of pushing on those efficiencies. And I thought, I've got to have something fun here to think about. And what really excites me is the opportunity to use assets that we have like Lloyd's Lab and Lloyd's Academy and continuously empower talent in this industry. So it's a little bit more subtle, but the opportunity to use those to create more of a heartbeat for the marketplace, that really gets me going. And whether that's saying we're bringing in different types, we're going to tackle nuclear fusion as a broader community altogether, or we're going to do broader partnerships, or we're going to continue to push out Lloyd's Lab around the world. Our Academy program, we've trained 14,000 people in the last 3 years. It's extraordinary. And to continue that and actually curate that into something that has proper accreditation so everyone can take advantage, something that we can hook on additional partners to, and that we can be an active part of the talent onboarding for not just one or two brokers around the world, but maybe 50, 60, 100. I mean, these are things that once you scale them, they can really make an impact for those that are operating on our market.
And also, once you've created that kind of fear of missing out, once somebody in an office that you're working in has done that trip to London or been through that program, you're going to say, well, I want to do that. Can I do that next year?
Yeah. And then in my mind, that fills up, because the more that the interest that you have and the more new distribution coming in to feed the great underwriting businesses here, the more we are obliged to make sure the operating platform that we have is as crisp as possible and clear as possible. And we clean away the cobwebs.
Funny enough, it was something I was involved in last year. I got asked to chair a particular session. It was really eye-opening, really interesting to meet retail brokers, for example, who, just having their eyes completely opened, particularly when they've been part of a chain and they'd, no one does this. They've been told that no one does this. And I was literally, as chairman, even though I stopped being a broker 20 years ago, I said, there's about 100 people within 100 yards of here who all do that. So sometimes you need to, if someone's telling you no, you need to maybe ask somebody else.
And to equip people to have the courage and conviction to do that. I actually think, it's
you
so
should
powerful.
Know somebody will do it.
Yeah, and it's so powerful here that sitting here just outside the doors, there's 50,000 people that operate in our industry here. That's the gift that we have, and we're in the nerve center of that. And I think that with that, there's an obligation for us to continue curating who we are.
I learned very quickly that if I ever said, no, that's impossible to a client, and that was the moment when they went to my nearest rival and then got it done.
I'm all about, how do you get to yes?
That's why I'm not a broker anymore. But what about the captive regime? When you were out selling the idea of Lloyd's around the world and in the Americas in particular, what are the USPs and how's that captive?
And again, if I could just rephrase the selling word to advocate, right? So again, we're really careful here, and we spend a lot of time with our teams to remind them, as a corporation, we aren't selling anything. We are curating that marketplace and driving it to a performance place. The great talents in this industry are our managing agents, right? And the business they're doing. But to your point, how do we advocate, especially in markets where the managing agents, our underwriting businesses, benefit from the business from, but they're not present, right? We say we're there when they're not. And what we do really advocate on is access to business, and on the captive structure in particular, we refresh the framework to say it is possible to do captives here in Lloyd's. At the moment, we're the only domicile in the UK and have them. Really benefit from your own control, your own form. You've got license network. We do not have to issue local policies here, the way our license framework is constructed globally. So that takes away so much administration, double broking, and all of that. Happy to have it if that's what you prefer as a client, but it does take away a lot of what can be sometimes friction while giving you complete control as a client. So that is a proposition that is here. It is not for everyone. I don't anticipate we're going to have a flood of 200 captives here. It is not for everyone, but there's definitely a swathe of the market that it fits.
Yes, there are so many different captive regimes in different places around the world that
and each one has different attributes to it, right? Yeah.
Yes. And when you're out advocating for the market, what do you find? Obviously, Lloyd's has lots of USPs. Which are the ones that land most with people, that resonate most with people, and which you kind of lead with?
Yeah, 100%. It is solution-oriented. So the volume of underwriting entities here, brokers, the volume of talent allows you to get to solutions. So that in of itself is number one. And then number two starts to become attributes of the access to additional partnerships and talent, et cetera. But number one is the ability to find solutions.
Right. And that's, I can get things done with you guys that I just 100%. Finding it pretty hard.
100%. Exactly. And it's ironic, before we even get to the USPs, sometimes the conversation doesn't get there because we're just demystifying all the, you're old, you're complex, you have to use Lloyd's forms. I mean, the list goes on. You're expensive, all these urban myths that are out there. All of them we've debunked, right? We've recently shifted the charging structure. It's a flat 1% on 85% of your charges here, 85% of the charge that you would have, flat 1%.
Yeah.
And after $3 billion, it goes down to only just cover the central fund. So previously we observed, we're like, wow, we were actually disincentivizing growth because who would want to continue paying the bigger that you get? So that is a great example. Reducing the returns. Again, all of this is interdisciplinary work between the different teams inside Lloyd's, which is also something that maybe hasn't been seen as much in the past, which is nice.
As you're viewing the business flow from the US, now we're talking specifically about the US, we've had this fantastic flow from the last 5 years of that admitted lines business going out into that solution-orientated excess and surplus lines market, of which Lloyd's is a big part. And then some of it finding its way here, but anyway, different channels into Lloyd's. Any feeling that that is peaking or that growth can continue? Because obviously E&S as a proportion of P&C in general in the US has increased hugely. It's probably doubled its share.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't want to say that it's peaking. I wouldn't want to make a comment on whether I still believe
You
there's
feel that there's a strong flow.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a strong flow. What we do see, as I know many people talk about, is admitted business flowing into the E&S market in a hardening market framework, of course, or what had been hardening, chasing that rate, because it does take time to file your rates on admitted basis, et cetera. There's a lot of advantages to admitted business too, but it takes time to do that. So there's a natural flow of much of that business does flow into E&S.
Yeah.
And then I anticipate as market conditions shift and cycles shift, we'll see some of that business flow out. What we are always challenged with, and I'm certainly challenged by our leadership here and our council leadership as well, is just understanding, are we, even though we're continuing to have the largest share of the E&S market in the United States as Lloyd's, are we or are we not growing in line with our peers? Are we outstripping their growth? And every year it's different, right? And some years it's not. And that is really related to that volume of admitted business that's flowing into the E&S market is actually not business that our businesses here in the Lloyd's marketplace want to do. It's not what they're set up to do. We are not a personal lines auto market. We have some auto businesses and we love them, but we are not set up to do your mainstream personal lines, some of the retail, some of the mainstream. We don't see as much of the primary casualty as other markets do. The businesses that are operating here, that's not the business that they want to be doing. So I think it's important that we always normalize those numbers.
And what about, obviously, we know there's ebb and flow, a cyclical ebb and flow between admitted and E&S, and therefore into and out of Lloyd's as the market changes. But we get the business because it was tough times in the admitted market, but we're staying here because actually we didn't realize we could get the service.
Correct.
And it was better than we thought. We thought it was the last resort, and actually it turned out we're staying because we get better coverage, we get better service.
Absolutely. So that's where I think there's an opportunity for our teams on the ground, whether it's in the United States in this example or around the world, to make sure that we're clear about what those advantages of being in the Lloyd's market are, and that we're keeping those relationships up with those brokers that are using the Lloyd's market more than just a one-hit wonder. And obviously you don't want to overdo it with too much stewardship either, but understanding who's trading in our marketplace, spending the time to understand the challenges, and what would it take to do a bit more, presuming that the managing agents do want that business.
One last question. We're actually sitting in one of the kind of goldfish bowls at the entrance of Lloyd. And I can see your next meeting's here, and it's going to be a fairly hard stop. So one last question would be about the brokers. Broker landscape's changed a huge amount. It never seems to stay the same. Consolidating, private equity ownership, roll-ups and all sorts of things. How are you risen to that challenge?
Yeah,
How do you keep in touch with all of them?
Yeah, it's exciting to see, right? I think it's exciting when a marketplace changes.
Does it change your strategy?
Yeah, it does. It feeds into them, right? So what we see, let's just go back around the world. We've seen brokerage operations integrate themselves, wholesale and retail, bring in some underwriting agencies. And those underwriting agencies who have also invested in data, strong technology, strong underwriting, and know their portfolios, they're the same ones that are then coming into marketplaces like ours and saying, is there a way for us to participate more directly so we can have a strong view of our own capacity and preserve some capacity for ourselves? And we very much welcome that, subject to understanding the performance of those portfolios and not being cherry-picked against. And it's a way to bring in additional business for our managing agents that may or may not have a footprint in the US, in this example, through their company market or otherwise. But again, it's all about performance. It's all about performance, because none of us can do what we want to do, whether it's curate the landscape or otherwise, if the market is not performing.
So we should be expecting to see all sorts of collaborations with brokers.
Yeah, different things come in. Again, it's about performance, and we're also making sure that we've got the right people on our side to understand the different types of delegated authority frameworks that are coming in, the algorithmic facilities and such that are coming in. We want to make sure we're teed up so we can assess those properly and help the best ones enter our market.
Dawn, I wish we had longer, but yes, you are indefatigable and you're in demand. So I'm going to have to leave you here, and we'll hopefully
well,
get
maybe
you to
we can
promise.
Talk again. We didn't even get to talent some things that really get me excited. So maybe
absolutely.
Next time.
Well, I'll have to get you back on the
Love
show
to.
soon.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
No, it's brilliant, Mark. Thank you. Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this program. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry. The Voice of Insurance is produced in association with Advantage Go. Release your underwriters to underwrite with Advantage Go's underwriting platform. Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.